marked by the Mafia prints. A full-length romance story. The black SUV rumbled to a stop in front of the Moretti estate. The iron gates groaned open like a warning, not a welcome. Two men in dark suits stepped out, eyes sharp enough to cut through steel. They didn't speak, but their guns gleamed in the dim light. They didn't trust me, neither did he. I kept my jaw tight, hands clenched on the leather strap of my bag. The night air smelled like cold metal and old regrets. The house loomed ahead, a fortress of silence, with windows like dead eyes. Watching me approach, no warm lights, no laughter, just the ghost of what used to be. When I stepped inside, the door shut behind me with a final thud. The hallway stretched wide and empty, floors polished but somehow lifeless, the kind of clean that screams someone's trying to erase everything. He was standing at the end, as still as a shadow, Luca Moretti, his dark eyes fixed on me, unblinking, unreadable, no welcome, no hate, just silence that hit harder than any insult. I wanted to shrink back, to disappear behind the walls, but I stood straight, meeting his gaze with everything I had left. He didn't say a word, he didn't need to. In that silence, I felt every scar between us. Betrayal, fear, and something like broken love. They said I'd be safer here, but they never asked if he wanted me. The room they gave me was across the hall from his, close enough to hear his footsteps, far enough to keep the peace. I stared at the door, wondering if he'd ever knock, if I'd ever hear a word. He turned away then, like I was already a ghost in his house. And maybe I was. It was raining the night they took him, of course it was. I remember the red and blue lights washing through the windows like sirens were something holy, like justice had finally come to collect. My father stood in front of me, tall and steady, eyes hard as the barrel of his gun. He didn't touch me, he didn't need to. He knew I'd do what he asked. Just stay quiet. You've done enough. I did. I watched them drag Luca out of his car with his hands behind his back, blood on his lip and rain in his hair. He didn't resist. That was the worst part. He just looked at me. That look still lives somewhere behind my ribs. Not rage, not shock, just silence, like I'd already said everything he needed to know. He didn't ask why. He didn't shout. He just stood there, soaked and still, while the officers read him rights he already knew weren't made for people like him. My father called it justice, a clean hit. He's not your problem anymore. But he was, he always would be. I stood on the steps like some quiet, useless thing, watching him disappear into the back of a black and white. He didn't look back. I think that hurt more than the cuffs. They called it a win, the headlines did, too, but all I felt was the silence afterward, and I've been trying to breathe through that silence ever since. The silence here isn't quiet, it hums, like a held breath. Like something waiting to snap. I walk the hallways like I'm trespassing, even though they said this was, for my protection. But nothing about this house feels safe. It's too clean, too still, like grief came in and polished the floors until it forgot what warmth felt like. There are no voices, no music, no signs of life except the soft click of my heels on marble and the security cameras that tilt just slightly when I pass. He's here, somewhere. I feel him more than I see him. I caught a glimpse this morning, through the glass pane off the main stairwell. Luca, down in the yard, sleeves rolled to the elbows, smoke curling from his hand like he needed the burn more than the nicotine. He didn't look up. I didn't wave. We pretend we don't notice each other, like pretending makes it easier. There's a room across from mine that used to be his office. It's locked now. The hallway between us feels longer than it is. I wonder if he hears me at night. When I shift in bed or try not to cry loud enough for the walls to carry it. He hasn't said a word to me since I got here. Not why are you here, not what do you want, not even get out. Just that stare, back on the doorstep, the one that stripped the apology from my throat before I could even offer it. I think I prefer the shouting, the blame, but this silence. It makes me wonder if I deserve it. This house used to be loud. I remember that, music in the kitchen, heated arguments over breakfast, Luca's laughter echoing down the hallway like it belonged here, like I did. Now it's just shadows and memory, a house of ghosts, and I'm one of them. The room across from his feels like a punishment. Here, the guard said, dropping my bag just inside the door. You'll stay here for now. He didn't have to clarify why here, I already knew. The hall is narrow. Only a few feet between our doors, but it feels like a stretch of road I'm not allowed to cross. I don't know if Luca chose the placement. I don't ask, but the message is clear. I'm close enough to be watched, far enough to be ignored. The walls are painted bone white, cold, clean, the kind of clean that scrubs out memory, not dirt. There's no art, no softness, just a bed, a window, and the sound of silence pressing in from every direction. I stare at his door longer than I mean to. There's no name on it, just dark wood and shadows, but I know it's his. I know the way his footsteps sound, slower than the guards, heavier than mine. I know the rhythm of his voice even when he's not speaking. We once shared a hotel hallway in Rome. He took the room across from mine then too, back when he smiled without restraint, and I thought dangerous meant kissing him with the door still open. That night, we kept the doors cracked, just enough to see the light from the other side. Now, I listen. For him, for anything, a cough, a curse, even his lighter. But there's nothing, he's not giving me silence by accident. He's carving it out, and still, I don't knock, still, I don't leave. I don't know what hurts more, that he won't speak to me, or that part of me understands why. He lost everything because of me, and now I sleep across the hall like a shadow of the girl who used to knock once, soft, before slipping into his arms. That girl's gone, now, there's just me, standing in a hallway full of ghosts, staring at a door that never opens. I thought it would be quiet, it's not. The silence in this house moves, it creaks in the walls, hums in the vents, sighs under the weight of all the things no one says. But tonight, it walks, footsteps, slow, heavy, measured. My breath catches when they stop outside my door. I don't move. I lie on my back in the dark, heart thudding too loud in a room that doesn't feel like mine, eyes fixed on the ceiling, waiting for the floorboards to speak again. They do. He walks the length of the hallway, then back again, then stops, not right in front of me this time, but near, close enough to remind me that I'm not the only one awake, not the only one haunted. Luca never used to pace. He was still, controlled, always sitting back in his chair like the whole world existed for him to watch and dismantle. But now he walks like something inside him can't settle, like stillness would make him shatter. I wonder if it's anger, or if it's me. My fingers curl around the edge of the blanket. I think about opening the door, about stepping into that hallway like I used to, back when it meant pulling him into bed, back when he wanted me close. But I stay, because the girl who would have knocked is long gone, and the man on the other side of that door doesn't want her back. I listen as he stops again, long pause, then the soft, metallic flick of his lighter. Once, twice, again, the sound slices through me like memory. I used to hate that sound. Now, I miss it. Another step, another breath held. He doesn't speak, doesn't knock, just walks away, leaving behind the faint scent of smoke and something else I can't name. I turn to face the door in the dark. He's gone now, but part of me wonders if he paused there, too, just long enough to remember, just long enough to ache. The air shifts before I hear him. I open my door and step out just as his boots echo down the hallway. Sharp, steady. I should have waited, should have listened harder. But it's too late now. We see each other. Half a breath. Half a second, then, nothing. He doesn't stop walking, doesn't look away, either. It's the kind of eye contact that burns. Not cruel, not curious, just relentless. Like he's trying to remember every line of my face, and hating that he still can. I freeze. Stupid, I know better, but my body doesn't. My fingers twitch by my side, like they remember being tangled in his hair, not clenching into fists. He passes close, too close, his arm brushing the air between us. Not touching, just enough to stir the scent of clean soap and something colder beneath. He doesn't flinch. I do, not because I'm scared of him, but because I'm scared of what I still feel. The way my heart stutters, the way my chest tightens like it used to when he'd pull me into his lap and tell me I was his only calm in the storm. Now, I'm the storm, and he walks through it like it can't touch him. He says nothing, just keeps going, but his head turns, barely, like he might have said something if he knew what wouldn't cost him more than it gave, and then he's gone. My knees don't buckle, I don't lean against the wall, I just stand there, staring at the place where he passed like a ghost, too alive to ignore, too far to reach. I breathe through my nose, steady, cool, but inside, everything is molten, and I hate that one glance can still undo me more than his silence ever could. I wasn't trying to hear him. The house is old, the walls don't care about secrets, and I wasn't sleeping, again, just drifting in the space between thoughts, when I heard his voice. Low, rough, controlled in that way that made you lean in, not out. My door was cracked, the light in the hallway spilled through like a line drawn between us. He stood by the front windows, phone pressed to his ear, body half shadowed. I almost closed the door, almost. But then I heard my name. Not fully, just the way someone says her, and the silence fills in the rest. No one touches her, Luca said, cold, certain, like it wasn't a warning but a sentence. I don't care what her father did. She's not part of that. He was quiet after that, listening, jaw tense, that scar beneath his eye catching the light like an old bruise that never healed right. She stays under my roof. She's mine to protect, mine. I held my breath like it might change the shape of what I'd heard, but it didn't. He wasn't angry, not the way I expected, not at me, He was defending me. That word again, mine. I pulled back, careful not to let the floor creak, closed the door before I could hear anything else. Before I could hear too much, back in bed, I stared at the ceiling. Maybe it didn't mean anything, maybe it was just business, territory, a power play in a house that had already lost too much ground. But maybe he still saw something in me worth guarding, even after everything. And that was the worst kind of hope. The quiet kind. The kind that didn't ask for anything out loud. Just waited, just listened, like me. The ceilings are too high, the kind of height that makes you feel like a ghost walking through someone else's ruin. This place used to be loud. I remember that, music bleeding through the halls, the smell of garlic and smoke, footsteps, laughter, even, before it all went silent. Now it feels like the house is holding its breath, waiting for something to start again, or end. I sat by the window in my room this morning, watching the fog roll off the trees. I've been here 5 days. No one said how long I'm meant to stay. No one said much of anything. But he could have sent me away. That thought keeps curling in the back of my mind, sharp-edged and strange. Luca could have had me gone the second I crossed the threshold. He didn't. He's barely looked at me, never spoken my name. But I'm still here, not locked in, not dragged down to a basement and tied to a chair like in the stories girls like me used to whisper about men like him. I'm just here, like I belong to the dust now. One more reminder of what got ruined. This isn't punishment, it's purgatory. That's worse. Punishment has rules, time limits, ends. Purgatory just is, endless, quiet, heavy. But this morning, I found fresh coffee in the kitchen, 2 mugs beside the sink. Only one had lipstick on the rim, mine, the other still warm when I touched it. Luca hadn't stayed, but he'd been there, a shadow passing through the room before I came in, a breath behind mine, not close, but not gone either. I don't know what that means. I'm starting to think he doesn't either. The house creaked like it was exhaling something it had been holding in too long. It was past midnight. I couldn't sleep. Not really, just lay there listening to the wind scrape branches against the windows. Too quiet to be comforting, too familiar to be ignored. Then his footsteps, slow, uneven. I didn't mean to get up. I told myself I just wanted water, but the truth was quieter than that. I just wanted to see him. He didn't notice me in the hallway. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. His jaw was tight, one eye starting to swell, blood at his collar, and his hands, raw, red, split knuckles like the ones I used to clean when things got bad before. He didn't speak, didn't even glance in my direction, just turned into the kitchen and went straight to the sink. I stood in the doorway, half in shadow, watching him scrub the blood from his fingers like it offended him, as if the water could wash more than just skin, like maybe it could take the weight with it. He used to let me do that. Sit him down, wrap his hands in silence and alcohol. I never asked what happened. He never told me, but it was the closest we came to softness. Now? He dried his hands like it hurt to be touched at all. The smell of antiseptic rose faintly behind the cabinet door down the hall. I knew where the first aid kit was, had passed it a dozen times without looking, but tonight, I looked, and I remembered, the old scars on his knuckles, the way he once said, "You always patch me up like you're trying to erase the fight," and maybe I had been, but not tonight. Tonight, I just watched him walk away, silent and bleeding, and I knew I wasn't ready to say anything, but I was ready to try. The sink stopped running, his door shut with that quiet finality I used to know too well. I waited until I couldn't hear him anymore. Not footsteps, not breath, just silence thick enough to fold myself into. The hallway stretched long and dark in both directions. Shadows moved even when I didn't. I walked barefoot, slow, careful, like the walls might remember too much if I wasn't quiet. The cabinet was still there, same corner, same chipped white paint on the handle. My fingers hesitated before opening it. Inside, dust, a box of matches, a mostly empty bottle of peroxide, and a newer first aid kit shoved toward the back, unopened, untouched, like no one bled here anymore, like the house decided it didn't care. I pulled it out, brushing the edge of the counter with my hip, just hard enough to sting. I didn't flinch. There was something bitter about it, how the kit was full, sterile, and used, while his hands looked like they'd gone to war. I remember the old ones, plastic cracked from too much use, gauze always running out, the antiseptic smell that clung to hotel beds and back seats and the inside of his collar when I leaned in too close. Some nights, he'd sit on the edge of a tub and let me patch him up without a word. The only sound was the rip of tape and his breath catching when I pressed too hard. He never said thank you. I never asked why he kept coming back bloody. It wasn't kindness, not really, it was knowing him, the shape of his pain, the stubbornness of it, and now I was holding gauze and tape like they still meant something. I shut the cabinet slowly, let my hand linger on the wood. Then I turned back down the hall, the kid in my hands, the quiet heavier than before, and I didn't know if it would matter, but I knew where his door was. I didn't knock. I didn't breathe too loud, either, just stood outside his door with the first aid kit in my hands and too much in my chest. The hallway felt colder now, like the house knew what I was about to do and wanted to stop me. I waited a beat, then another, not because I thought he'd open the door, but because part of me wondered if he was already on the other side, listening, holding still like I was. His door looked the same, dark wood. Polished, untouched, except I knew what lived behind it, the weight, the silence, the ghosts. I bent down slowly, placing the kit on the floor, careful not to let it make a sound. No note, no explanation, no apology, just a quiet offering, bandages instead of words, gauze instead of guilt. I straightened up, but didn't turn away right away. My eyes traced the grain of the wood. Memories lived there, in the dents from his rings, the scratch under the handle from the time he slammed it shut. Behind me, he once let me in without asking. Now I was leaving things outside, like a stranger. I took one step back, then another, and only when I was sure I wouldn't turn around did I walk away. Each step down the hall felt like a confession, not to him, to myself, that I still cared, that I couldn't not. The air felt heavier near my door. I leaned against it, heart stupidly loud, foolish, maybe, but at least I'd done something. I didn't expect him to use it, didn't expect anything, but still. When the house went quiet again, I listened harder than I meant to, and I stayed awake too long wondering if he would open the door. The hallway stayed silent, cold, like the air itself was holding its breath. I didn't move from my doorway, just watched. Minutes passed, maybe more. The house felt too big, too empty, but then, a faint creak. The door to his room shifted open, just a crack, a breath, a pause, then nothing. I waited, pretending I wasn't listening for the soft shuffle inside, the rustle of fabric, the dull clink of a plastic bottle, bandage wrappers, maybe. I wanted to hope, not for words, not yet, just a sign. But the door didn't close, it stayed open, a thin line of light bleeding into the dark hallway. I sat down on the edge of my bed, staring at the blank wall. It didn't stare back, didn't judge. I felt ridiculous, like a fool waiting for a truce in a war that maybe didn't have one. But I wasn't sorry, this waiting. It was something I hadn't allowed myself in a long time. The ache of uncertainty was new, raw. It meant I still cared, despite everything, despite him, despite me. Somewhere deep inside, I was learning that silence wasn't always the absence of feeling. Sometimes it was the hardest way to say, I see you. The bruises on his knuckles weren't just marks of pain. They were the language of a man who fought every day. And fought alone. Maybe now, I was starting to speak it, too, without words, without promises. The door didn't close that night, it just stayed open enough to let the light touch the floor, a quiet bridge between us, and I waited. The kit was gone, no note, no sign, just the door shut tight again. I didn't expect words, didn't expect thanks, only that small, empty space between us. I poured coffee, the bitter scent filling the too quiet kitchen. My hands shook slightly, but I didn't care. Sitting at the table felt like taking a small breath after holding it for too long. The house was still, cold floors, dark corners, no footsteps but mine, no voice but the hum of the morning. His door remained closed, a wall I couldn't climb, but the kit wasn't there anymore. That meant something, even if he didn't say it. I kept my eyes down, tracing the steam rising from my cup. The silence between us stretched like a thread, thin, but unbroken. I didn't want to storm the door, or demand space, or crumble into tears. I just stayed. I stayed because maybe, for the first time, staying was enough. Maybe this house, this silence, was the truest conversation we could have right now. I folded my hands around the warm mug and let the quiet settle inside me. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just presence. I was here. He hadn't pushed the kid away. He hadn't thrown it back. The door was closed, but the distance felt smaller, not by much, but enough. I realized then, this wasn't about fixing what was broken. It was about owning the space I was in, no matter how cold it felt, no matter how much it hurt, because sometimes, staying silent was the loudest thing you could say, and I was ready to say it, again and again. The bathroom door was cracked open, soft light spilling out into the dim hallway. I paused, almost didn't want to look, but the trash can caught my eye, white paper torn and crumpled, the unmistakable crinkle of bandage wrappers. I swallowed hard. He used it. The salve was half gone too, its faint scent still lingering faintly in the cold air. For a flicker of a second, hope bloomed sharp and sudden in my chest. Maybe the silence wasn't a wall, but a shield. Maybe he was fighting, just not with words. but when I passed him later, just a few hours after noticing the trash, he didn't look up, didn't even blink in my direction. His footsteps barely stirred the floor, passing by like I was nothing but a shadow on the wall. No thanks, no glance, no sign he knew what I'd done. It was a quiet kind of rejection, the one that doesn't scream but seeps in. Settling heavy between us like a slow leak, I stood there, watching his back disappear into the kitchen's cold light, feeling the distance stretch a little wider. Caring didn't mean closeness, not here, not yet. I folded my arms, breathing in the silence that was louder than any fight. I wanted to reach out again, but the words caught in my throat, tangled with the ache. He was still fighting, and I was still waiting to see if my small gesture meant anything at all. The kitchen was colder than usual, even though the heater was humming low in the corner. I stepped inside just as Luca reached for the glass on the counter. Our eyes almost met, a breath away. For a moment, I thought he might say something, anything. But he didn't. His knuckles were still bruised, dark shadows beneath the skin, like bruises I could never touch. He drank without looking up, the water swallowing the silence between us. I stood frozen, my pulse loud in the quiet room. He moved past me without a word, without a glance, like I was furniture, like I didn't exist at all. The click of the cabinet door closing was louder than his footsteps fading down the hall. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I knew he saw me. That was the worst part, not being ignored, but being deliberately invisible, like I was something to be avoided. I wanted to call out, to say anything to break the wall that had settled between us. But the words caught somewhere inside me, too tired, too afraid. So I watched him go, empty-handed and unreachable. The kitchen felt colder still, like it had swallowed my hope whole and spat out nothing but silence. And in that silence, I felt myself harden, brick by fragile brick, because trusting him felt dangerous now. Maybe some things were never meant to be fixed. Or maybe I was just another thing he couldn't bear to face. I turned away quietly, the sound of my own footsteps echoing in the space he'd left behind. He looked at me like I was the one holding the gun, not my father. Not his enemies, me. That moment replays behind my eyes like a broken film reel. The night they came for him, cuffing his wrists, dragging him away in shadows. I remember the way his eyes met mine, not angry, not furious, just betrayed, like I'd become a stranger overnight. They said I'd be safer with him, that he'd protect me, no matter what, but they never asked him if he wanted me there. I told my father where Luca was hiding, thought it was the only way to keep him alive, naive, foolish. I thought I was saving him. Instead, I handed him over. The arrest wasn't clean or quiet, it was loud with sirens and shattered promises. I heard Luca's breath catch when the cuffs clicked tight, and it wasn't because he was scared, it was the weight of disbelief, of trust lost forever. I thought my choice was right, a sacrifice. But I didn't realize sacrifices leave scars, scars that don't heal, only fester. When I saw him in that cold cell, eyes hollow, I wanted to reach through the bars and take it all back, but there was nothing to grab, nothing left to fix. I gave up the boy who trusted me for the woman I was supposed to be. That's the lie, the one I keep telling myself to quiet the shame. I didn't betray Luca out of hatred, I did it out of love, twisted, broken love that didn't know how to be anything else. And he paid the price. Now, the silence between us isn't just cold, it's the echo of 1,000 unspoken apologies. I want to say the words, I want to explain, but the truth sticks in my throat like poison. Maybe one day he'll hear it, not as excuse, but as the truth. For now, all I have is the memory of his eyes, the look of a boy who lost his last piece of faith in me. The hallway outside is dim, the shadows stretched long. I trace the scars I've left, silent and raw. No words can fix what I broke. But maybe, just maybe, my silence can start to heal. The mirror's surface was cold beneath her fingertips, but Eva didn't flinch. She stared at the woman looking back, tired eyes, skin pulled tight over sharp cheekbones, lips pressed into a line that wouldn't soften. She didn't cry, she didn't plead, she only spoke the truth, her voice low, almost a whisper. You broke him. The words landed heavier than she expected, not like a weight on her chest, but deeper, inside her bones. It wasn't just guilt twisting inside her, it was something physical, a dull ache where her ribs should have been. You didn't mean to, but you did. She swallowed. The reflection didn't argue, didn't turn away in shame or rage. It held her gaze, steady and accusing. It was her fault. Not all of it, not the lies, the danger, or the choices forced by a father who used her like a pawn, but her silence, her fear. The moment she handed Luca over in a desperate attempt to save him, she cracked the foundation they built, even if it was fragile. She reached up, traced the line of a bruise that wasn't there, but felt like it was, on her own hand. Bones don't forget, the weight of every quiet moment since. Luca's cold shoulders, the bruises she hadn't asked about, the first aid kit left untouched until the night she found it used, came rushing back. The mirror didn't offer forgiveness, no one did. But she could start owning her part. No more hiding behind, I didn't know better, no more blaming her father alone for the wreckage between them. She was here now, and she had to face what she'd done. A breath left her lips, shaky but steady. I broke him, and now I have to try to fix what's left. She turned away from the glass, the room quiet but for the soft hum of the house settling around her. The past wasn't a ghost to exorcise, it was a shadow she'd carry, but maybe, just maybe, it didn't have to be the end. Her hands clenched loosely at her sides, trembling with the weight of truth finally spoken aloud, silent, but not defeated, not yet. The bruises fade, but bones never forget. He was there, just outside the hallway, standing against the peeling paint like he belonged to the shadows. I swallowed the lump in my throat, tried to steady my voice, not forgiveness, not an apology, just acknowledgement. Luca. He didn't look up, didn't stop walking. I took a step closer, heart thudding too loud in the silence. I'm not asking you to forgive me. My words hung in the cold air, fragile, like glass waiting to shatter. His shoulders didn't twitch, his steps didn't falter, the bruises on his knuckles from the other night flared behind my eyes, the bandages I left at his door, now used and gone, the weight of all the things I couldn't say pressed down on me, heavier than the silence he wrapped around himself like armor. He passed me like I was air, like I was nothing at all. I wanted to reach out, to hold something real between us, but it slipped through my hands before I could even grasp it. Please, just see me. He didn't hear. Or maybe he didn't want to. Not angry, not cruel, just gone. And there I was, standing alone in the dim hallway, the cold floor biting through my shoes, knowing, this was the moment I realized how deeply silence could wound. The zipper on the bag clicked shut, twice. She checked the straps, adjusted the weight on her shoulder. Quiet steps on cold floor tiles, the only sound in the house that never really slept. Eva's hand hovered over the doorknob. The hallway stretched out, long and empty, shadows pooling under the dim light. Her breath caught, slow and steady. She was done with waiting for a crack, a word, a sign. Fingers curled around the cold metal, a soft sound. Not quite a footstep, not quite a sigh. She froze. At the top of the stairs stood Luca, no words, just watching. The bruises on his knuckles dim in the low light, the scars beneath barely visible. His eyes, dark and unreadable, held something, maybe regret, maybe fear, maybe a silent plea. For a long moment, neither moved. She didn't expect a savior, she didn't expect a confession. She only felt the quiet tether tighten between them, a pause, a breath caught between past and what might come. The doorknob slipped from her fingers. Eva didn't leave, Luca didn't speak, but in the stillness, something shifted. Something fragile and unspoken. She turned slowly, the weight in her bag lighter now, and for once, the silence wasn't empty. The hallway felt colder before, like the silence was a wall, but now, just a little less cold. Sometimes not leaving is the braver thing. This moment held no promises, only the fragile, trembling hope that maybe, for once, the distance could pause. The storm rolled in fast, low clouds like bruises, wind clawing at the shutters. The power died mid-breath. 1 second I was brushing my teeth, the next, the house exhaled into pitch black, silence like a held breath. Then the rain started, heavy, relentless, familiar. I lit one of the emergency candles from the hallway drawer. Its flames stuttered before settling into a shaky glow. I didn't go back to my room. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of hiding, maybe I didn't want to feel small anymore, or maybe I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts. The sitting room was empty, shadowed and humming with the storm. I curled into the corner of the couch, tucking my knees to my chest. The candles sat on the table beside me, casting flickers against the rain-drenched windows. I stared at nothing. Let the thunder do the talking. Footsteps. I didn't turn, but my breath caught. Luca stepped into the room like he didn't know I was there, barefoot, shirt rumpled, eyes somewhere far off. He froze when he saw me, just a second, then his gaze drifted past me, like I was just another shadow in the room. He didn't leave. He crossed to the armchair in the corner. Not too close, not too far, and sat, said nothing, just leaned back, one hand curled near his mouth like he was debating words he wouldn't say. The candle between us flickered, the rain softened. And the silence wasn't sharp anymore, just still. I didn't look at him, he didn't look at me, but we were breathing the same air again. That felt like something. No one moved, no one needed to. The lights were out, and for once, so was the armor. I didn't leave the room, he didn't either, and somehow, that felt louder than anything either of us could have said. sometimes, being in the same silence is braver than breaking it. The candle between us burned low, just a soft, quiet heart beating. Between two people too proud to speak, Luca hadn't moved since he sat, elbows on knees, eyes down, hands slack, the kind of stillness that said I'm thinking, but I don't want to feel it. Outside, the storm rolled and whispered, less fury now, more ache. I watched the light shift across his face, gold, then gone, soft, then sharp. Shadows moved like they had their own history with him. He used to flick that damn lighter every time he was nervous, every time we were near each other, but pretending not to be. I hated the sound. Now I missed it. I don't know how long we sat like that, minutes, maybe years. He glanced up once, just once, and I looked back, not long, not sweet, just held. It felt like the hallway again, when I left the kit, that ache in the air, the kind that said I'm not okay, without needing words. His eyes didn't flinch, they never did, but something in them dimmed, like he was remembering something he'd tried hard to forget. Maybe we were both doing that. I didn't speak. I almost did. The words were right there, tucked under my tongue, but I let them sit, because silence wasn't cold anymore. It was waiting. A memory pressed at the back of my mind, the last time we sat this close. No guards, no blood, no fences between us, just him, on a summer night, asking me if I believed in fate. I'd told him no. But right now, in this ruined stormlit room, it felt a lot like something had brought us here, and was asking us not to run. He didn't look away. Neither did I. Some silences aren't empty, some silences are just waiting for the right kind of truth. The candle wavered, his breath didn't. I could hear it, steady, low, not calm, just contained, like every part of him had been wrapped in wire and made to sit still. The last ember of silence curled between us like smoke. Then, his voice. Why are you really here? It wasn't sharp, not biting, no accusation, just worn, like a question that had sat too long in his chest and rusted its way out. He didn't look at me when he asked, he stared at the floor. I didn't answer right away. My lungs felt too full, my mouth too dry, my hands curled against my thighs to stop the tremble. I'd been waiting for this, dreading it, but still, I owed him that much, and maybe more, because beneath that single question wasn't just curiosity, it was need. He needed to know if I came back to make peace, or just to make myself feel better, if I'd come out of guilt or something else. The shadows moved again. Candlelight licking across his jaw. I remembered kissing him there once, fast, before he could make a joke out of it. Now I just stared, afraid to touch what we used to be. I told myself it was because I had nowhere else to go, I said finally, but that wasn't true. His shoulders didn't move. I'm here because even after everything, you're the only place I've never been able to forget. Stillness. He blinked, slow, but his hands. I saw the twitch in his fingers, like something in him flinched at hearing it. I didn't reach for him, didn't beg. I just let it sit there. The truth he asked for. It hung in the space between us like the storm had paused to listen. Sometimes the question is simple, it's the answer that ruins you. He didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't look away, just sat there, still as stone, the candlelight casting slow, broken shadows across the sharp lines of his face. The question still hung in the air. Why are you really here? But I knew it wasn't really about that anymore, not just about why I came back, but about why I left in the first place. So I answered. I thought I was saving you. My voice didn't shake. I thought it would, but it came out like truth does when you've carried it too long. Heavy, flat, and undeniable. I didn't think they'd hurt you. My father swore they wouldn't. He still didn't speak. His jaw twitched once, barely. I was stupid enough to believe him. I swallowed, staring at my hands in my lap. They looked too small for what I'd done. You weren't supposed to get caught, just watched, just slowed down enough to keep you out of that warehouse. That night, he blinked, slowly, but I saw it. I didn't know what else to do. I was 20, terrified, still thought justice was something that came with clean hands. A beat, the thunder outside rolled like something far away. I didn't know it would break you. That was the line. The one I hadn't let myself say out loud. It landed somewhere between us, heavy, real, and true, because it did break him. Not just the arrest, not the beatings or the headlines or what his father made of it, but me. I broke him. He leaned back slightly, gaze still unreadable, but softer now, less steel, more shadow. Still, he said nothing, didn't forgive, didn't accuse, just listened, and in that quiet, for the first time in years, I felt something shift. Not a wound closing, but a hand reaching toward it. Truth doesn't heal things right away, but it's how the bleeding stops. The silence didn't fall, it settled, like dust after a storm. He didn't answer me, didn't move. For a moment, I wondered if I'd imagined speaking at all, but then Luca leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, hands clasped loosely like he was holding something fragile between them, something invisible and breakable. The air between us felt stretched, straining but unbroken. I didn't expect forgiveness, that was never what this was. I just needed him to see me, not the traitor, not the cop's daughter, just the girl who never stopped loving him, even when love made her choose the wrong side. He let out a slow breath, not angry, not relieved, just tired, like holding everything in had worn him down to the bone. The candlelight flickered behind him, casting shadows that danced like ghosts on the wall. His face, always so unreadable, so sharply made, was softer now, still closed, but not locked. I used to think silence meant hate, I whispered, my voice barely more than a thought, but now I think it's just where the pain lives when there's no room left to speak it. He didn't look at me, just nodded once, the smallest thing, but I saw it, and it meant more than any apology ever could, because he stayed. That was the shift, not the candles or the storm or the fact that I finally said the thing that had been choking me for 4 years. It was that he didn't walk away, didn't throw it back at me, didn't break the silence with violence or rage or blame. He just breathed, and let me stay in the room. There was space now, not warmth, not yet, but something quieter, something like stillness, and for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to fix anything, just be there, with him, while the rain slowed and the candles burned low, while the breath between us held, unbroken, waiting, ready to become something else. Sometimes the loudest forgiveness is the one that stays silent. The storm had quieted, but the room hadn't. We sat in the same soft dark, surrounded by the hiss of candlelight and the faint tick of the old grandfather clock in the hall. The air still held the shape of what I'd said, like a scar still fresh, skin pulled tight around it. Luca hadn't spoken, not since I told him the truth, and I hadn't asked for anything after, because what came next had to be his. He shifted, slowly, as if the weight of his own body resisted him. He stood, not with the tense violence I'd seen before. Not with the rage he kept bottled in his jaw and fists, just stillness. His footsteps crossed the rug with no sound. I didn't look up, I couldn't, not until he stopped in front of me. I did then, looked, and there it was in his hand, the lighter, that same silver piece of him that had always unsettled me. He flicked it when he was thinking, when he was nervous, when he was 2 seconds away from pulling someone apart. I used to hate the sound, now I missed it when it was gone. He didn't say anything, just reached down and took my hand. Not roughly, not gently, just, like he needed to, and placed the lighter in my palm. I stared at it, cold metal, familiar weight, years of his touch pressed into the edges. Then his hand covered mine, closed my fingers over it like a secret. Keep it, he said quietly. His voice was low, rough, like it hadn't been used in too long. It's always worked better in your hands. Then he walked away, didn't look back, didn't wait for me to react, just left me there, holding the only thing he'd ever really kept close. And now, he was giving it to me, not as a gift, but as something that still remembered us. I didn't cry, didn't whisper his name. I just held it, tight, and let the warmth from his fingers stay with me longer than he did. Sometimes, love doesn't come back with words. Sometimes it comes as a flick of silver and the sound of someone staying, just long enough to matter. I sat on the edge of the bed, knees drawn in, the hem of Luca's old t-shirt brushing my thighs. The lighter rested in my palm like a question I wasn't sure I could answer. It was warm. Still, his hand had only left it minutes ago, but the heat hadn't faded, neither had the weight. I turned it over once, then again. The hinge creaked just slightly when I flicked it. Click. The sound used to grate on my nerves, sharp, constant, like he needed the rhythm to keep himself from unraveling. Now it was quiet, familiar, like breath. I flicked it again. Watched the small flame bloom, unsteady, then go out. Click, flame, dark, a heartbeat. That's what it was to him. A thing to hold when his fists couldn't, a focus, something alive in his hand that didn't fight back. And now he'd given it to me, not by accident, not because he had nothing else, because he still remembered who I was, who we were. I curled my fingers around it, felt the corners press into my skin. It wasn't smooth, it wasn't easy to hold, neither was he, neither was I, but something had shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, just gently. He hadn't touched me, hadn't said anything beyond that one sentence. But I felt it, the pause in him, the stillness. It wasn't a wall anymore, it was a door, and he'd left it open just enough for me to decide. I didn't cry, I didn't break, but I smiled, just barely, because for the first time since walking back into this world, into his world, I wasn't trying to earn space in it, I was simply in it, and he had noticed. Some things don't need to be said, They just need to be held long enough to feel real again. I smelled coffee before I saw him, dark roast, bitter, the kind he never sweetened. The kitchen was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the wall clock. No music, no threats, just Luca. He stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, pan in hand. His movements were slow, deliberate, not stiff like before, not armored, just present. He didn't turn when I entered, but he didn't leave either. That was new. I walked to the other side of the counter, opened a cabinet, reached for the mug I always used. He used to move away when I got close, a flicker of retreat in the eyes, a door quietly shutting. Not today. He flipped something in the pan, eggs, maybe. He didn't glance at me, didn't speak, but his breathing didn't change, and mine finally steadied. I found a knife, pulled a tomato from the basket, sliced it clean and slow. The rhythm gave me something to focus on, something to share. We weren't talking, but we were moving in sync, two strangers in familiar skin. The silence was no longer heavy. It wasn't a punishment. It was peace. He handed me a plate when he was done with his, not looking, just setting it near my elbow like it was muscle memory, like I'd always been there. And maybe I had, maybe beneath all the anger and silence, some part of him had never really stopped setting things down for me. We ate. Apart, but not apart. I didn't try to fill the air. He didn't try to push me out of it. There was no apology in the way he stood next to me, no spoken truce. But there was a rhythm now, quiet, shared, like two hands working the same knot loose without pulling too hard. No declarations, no forgiveness. Just the soft sound of plates, footsteps, the heat of the stove, and us, not healed, not whole, but no longer hurting each other just by being in the same room. Sometimes, the first sign of care isn't a word, it's staying. I wasn't looking for anything, I was just opening drawers, trying to stay quiet, trying not to feel too much. It was in the back of the second drawer in the hallway console, the one with old receipts, worn coasters, a cracked keychain from a hotel that no longer existed, a watch, leather strap, silver face, scuffed. The second hand didn't move, but I remembered when it did. I remembered him wearing it the first time he kissed me, rain in my hair, his palm at my jaw, the cold face of the watch pressing into my cheek as he held me. It had stopped working years ago. I'd seen it tossed on his nightstand once, forgotten, or maybe just too broken to wear. I didn't think, I just sat on the floor with it, the tiles cold beneath me, wiped the dust off with the hem of my shirt, bent the buckle straight, cleaned the face with careful fingers, like I was afraid I'd wake something sleeping inside it. I didn't try to fix it. It wasn't about making it work again. It was about remembering that it had, that once. There was time between us, not war, not silence, just hours and touches and quiet Sundays where I traced the line of that watch around his wrist and thought I'd found something steady. I left it on the hallway table, right at the edge, where I knew he'd see it, didn't say anything, didn't wait around to watch, just walked away. The next morning, it was gone, no note, no word, just gone, and something in my chest loosened. Not hope exactly, not yet, but it felt like breath, like space where pain used to live. He hadn't thrown it away. He hadn't left it untouched. He'd taken it back. That was enough. Love doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just leaves something behind, waiting to be remembered. I wasn't trying to look inside. I just paused in the hallway, hand grazing the edge of the wall like I always did. The old wood there still had a splinter that snagged at my skin. Tiny, annoying, familiar. Luca's door was cracked. Not wide, just a sliver, like a held breath, light pooled at the corner, soft and yellow. The rain outside had gone quiet again, not gone, just gentler now, tapping like a secret. I didn't move closer, just looked. The nightstand, the watch I'd left, sitting right where his hand would rest if he reached for his gun in the dark, and next to it, the lighter, mine now, though he hadn't said it again. He didn't need to. I hadn't seen him use it since he gave it to me, and still, there it was, not tucked away in a drawer, not thrown back into some desk. Like it didn't matter, placed, deliberate. Like a wordless thank you I wasn't supposed to hear. The hallway felt warmer than it had in days. I didn't smile, not fully, but my shoulders fell a little. I could breathe better, not because he'd forgiven me, but because maybe he didn't need to anymore. He kept them, not for show, not for me, just because they meant something, still, and that was enough. Some people write letters. Some say it with hands or mouths or messy, aching words. Luca places things, carefully, quietly, and if you're still enough to notice, that's how you know. That's how he tells you. You're not a ghost here anymore, you're seen, kept, not forgotten. Sometimes, the smallest things say what hearts won't dare to. The night air was heavy with quiet. After dinner, We walked side by side through the dim hallways of the villa. The storm outside softened to a slow, steady drizzle. No words passed between us. Not because we had nothing to say, but because neither of us knew how to say it without undoing the fragile balance we'd built. His steps matched mine, deliberate but careful, like he was testing the ground between us. The faint flicker of candlelight followed us from room to room, casting long shadows that stretched and shrank with every move. The sitting room where we'd shared truths was behind us now, but the weight of it settled in the air, unspoken and undeniable. When we reached my door, he didn't stop or turn away. Instead, he just waited, standing there, silent and steady, the way he used to before everything broke. His hands were in his pockets, his eyes fixed on the lock. I fumbled with my keys, fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the strange comfort of knowing he wouldn't walk away this time. I looked up, expecting something, an apology, a word, a gesture, but he didn't offer any of those. He just waited, patient, silent, as if he understood that this moment wasn't about words, that his presence alone was enough. When the door clicked open, he stepped back a little, giving me space. I turned to face him, searching his expression. The hard edge was softened now, just a faint trace of something like peace in his gaze. He waited until I closed the door behind me, the sound final and intimate. Then, almost quietly, I heard his footsteps retreat down the hall. No promises, no declarations, just him staying, just him not shutting me out when the night fell. For the first time in a long while, I felt safe, and that was enough. The lighter felt heavy in my palm, cold silver that somehow carried warmth. I flicked it once, then again. The tiny flame wavered, steady enough, not desperate like it used to be when Luca held it. The sound was softer now, less like a nervous tick and more like a heartbeat I'd come to understand. I sat on the edge of my bed, the rain tapping steady against the window. The storm had faded, but the quiet inside was nothing like the silence that used to feel like punishment. Tonight, it was a space I could breathe in without holding my breath. I thought about his gesture, the lighter, how he'd just handed it over. No words, no explanations. It wasn't pity, not anymore. I could finally believe that it was trust, tentative, fragile, but real, like a thread stretched between us, thin, but unbroken. I wasn't looking back. I wasn't waiting for permission to exist in his world or his life. I didn't have to prove I belonged. For once, the weight I carried wasn't a cage but a quiet flame I could hold without burning myself. Luca was absent from the room, but his presence lingered in that small silver object, in the slow steadiness of the moment. I wasn't tethered to his forgiveness anymore. I was tethered to something softer, something that might grow. The flame flickered again, and I let it burn a little longer. No fear, no doubt, just this quiet, steady light. I closed my eyes and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe this stillness, this waiting, was enough. The storm had passed hours ago, but the silence inside the estate thickened like fog. Luca's phone buzzed again, once, twice, until finally, he slipped behind the closed door of his office. I stayed near the vent, heart tightening with every muffled word I couldn't fully catch. His voice was low, clipped, but sharp enough to snap me out of the fragile peace I'd just found. There was a name, one I hadn't heard in years but still felt like a knife pressed to my ribs. Ricci one. The same family that haunted my past, the ones who held grudges like weapons, the same ghosts that had torn us apart before. I pressed my ear closer, but his words blurred. My father's silence on the other end was worse. No answers, no reassurance, just cold quiet that made my skin crawl. I swallowed the rising panic. Not for Luca, not for myself, but for the storm gathering beyond these walls, ready to drag us back into the chaos. Luca's presence in the next room felt heavier now, less distant. His calm had cracked, the way his hand tightened around the phone, the subtle tension in his jaw, protector mode kicking in. But this time it wasn't just about him, it was about us, about keeping me safe, whether he wanted to admit it or not. I realized then how small my world had become, no longer just about trust and forgiveness between us, but about surviving the forces still trying to break everything apart. My role as a pawn hadn't ended, the game was still being played, and somewhere beneath the exhaustion, I felt a flicker of something new, a resolve to stand beside him, not just because I was forced to, but because I wanted to. The silence broke, not with words, but with a shift, a warning. The past wasn't done with us, and neither were we with it. At night, the house settles into its familiar silence. But I know better. The quiet is a kind of waiting, like a breath held too long. I hear his footsteps first, slow, uneven, pacing through the hall like a ghost, trying to outrun itself. Luca's back. He stops outside my door. No knock, no announcement, just the soft scrape of his boots on the floor. I hold my breath. then the faint click of a lighter, not the one in my palm, but the one he still flicks, absently, nervously, like it's a pulse he can't stop feeling. I close my eyes and listen. The smoke curls in the air, the silence thick around it. It's a habit I hated once. The sound like a warning, a reminder of everything dangerous in him. Now, it's something else. A quiet rhythm that says he's here, that he's not running away. The years of tension coil in the space between us, old fear folding into something softer, watchfulness, maybe even care. I don't feel trapped anymore, I feel guarded, protected, in the way only someone who's been through hell can offer. He lingers, his footsteps don't retreat down the hall as quickly as they used to. Instead, they pause, near my door, waiting for a moment that might never come. I think about the first time I left. That first aid kit by his door, the hesitance in my own steps, the silence between us like a wall. Now, his presence here is no wall, it's a shield. In the darkness, I flick the lighter in my hand, the flame dances, small, fragile, steady. He doesn't need to say it, the lighter is enough. And maybe, just maybe, so am I. I didn't mean to see him like that. Shirt half off, the scars on his ribs stark against his pale skin. The lines were jagged, old wounds that time hadn't smoothed out, each one a story he never told. I froze for a second, caught off guard by how real he looked without the armor of the dark leather jacket and cold stare. Luca noticed me before I could step back. His eyes flicked over my face, unreadable. I didn't ask about the scars. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to invade his space. Just a quiet presence. He didn't say anything at first. Like the silence itself was a kind of language between us. Then, unexpectedly, he spoke. Not about me, not about us, about his uncle, about the heavy weight of the Moretti name, about prison, about what it cost him to survive behind those walls where power was currency and weakness meant death. His voice was low, almost hesitant, but there was something stripped bare beneath the usual sharp edges. I listened, no questions, no judgment, just listening. The scar across his ribs wasn't just a mark of pain. It was a map of who he'd had to be to get through hell and come back breathing. I thought about my own scars, the ones no one saw, the ones I carried in silence. For the first time, Luca was more than the Mafia prince. He was the man, the boy who'd been shaped and shattered and somehow still standing, not a myth, not a legend, just him, broken and raw and real. He glanced at me then, and maybe saw that I understood without needing the story spelled out. The room felt smaller, softer, like we'd taken one more step towards something neither of us could name yet. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't love, not yet, but it was something real. And maybe that was enough for now. The hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that held memories in its breath. I passed the old room, the one where it happened, the first time, not a movie moment, no fireworks or crashing symphonies, just a dare, a challenge thrown between us like a gauntlet. I remember how his eyes flickered, not with heat, but with something softer, something vulnerable that almost scared me more than the danger. Around us, Luca didn't kiss me to claim me or prove anything. He kissed me like he was testing if I'd break under the weight of him. I stayed longer than I should have that night, not because I believed in forever, no, not then, but because for a few hours, the silence between us felt like a promise. The storm outside, the war we were both fighting inside, faded into the background. Now, years later, I walk past that same room and I see it for what it was, flawed, imperfect, but real. It wasn't the kind of love story you read about in books. It was jagged edges and hesitant steps, but it was ours. Luca was still there then, the boy beneath the scars, beneath the anger and the Mafia prince facade. That boy hasn't disappeared, he's buried deeper now, tangled in the armor he wears. But I know he's still there, waiting. I let my ghost of a smile linger as I walk on, because maybe the past isn't a place to get stuck. Maybe it's just a room you pass through to get to something quieter. Something like hope. The rain taps lightly against the windows behind me, like a soft reminder that time moves forward, even when your heart wants to stand still. And maybe, just maybe, so can I. He pulled back again, the way he always did, slowly, carefully, like a shadow retreating before dawn, not cold, never cruel, but guarded, protecting himself from something, maybe even from me. I caught him in the hallway. The dim light from the cracked door caught the edge of his jawline, the way it always did when he was trying to disappear from the world. I stepped closer, not too close, but close enough to fill the space he was trying to leave empty. Luca, my voice was quiet, but firm, like I was laying down a truth, not begging for mercy. I don't need you to forgive me. The words hovered between us, raw and simple. Don't shut me out. He didn't say anything, not right away. His hands twitched, like he wanted to reach for something, maybe me, but held himself back. The wall between us didn't crumble, it didn't even crack, but it softened, just a little. He stayed, didn't walk away, didn't turn his back. In that silence, I felt something shift, not a promise, not a surrender, just a space opening up where there hadn't been one before. I realized then, it wasn't about fixing what was broken between us. It was about showing up, again and again, no matter how messy the past or uncertain the future. He looked at me, eyes flickering like the lighter he gave me, the same silver thing I kept tucked in my pocket. No grand words, no sweeping gestures, just the quiet truth that I mattered enough not to be shut out. For the first time, I wasn't reaching alone. Maybe that was enough. The rain tapped softly against the window behind me, a rhythm to hold on to. Don't shut me out, I repeated softly, like a prayer and a promise, and he didn't answer, but he stayed, and that, for now, was enough. The message wasn't wrapped in a bow or written with a threat scrawled in red ink. It was colder than that, a single envelope, slipped under the gate, pressed against the gravel like a silent warning. Luca found it first. He didn't say a word when he brought it inside, but the way his jaw clenched told me everything I needed to know. My name was on the envelope, written in a hand I hadn't seen in years but would never forget, the mark of someone who once carved fear into my skin. I sat on the edge of my bed, the rain tapping a slow rhythm against the window. Luca stood near the door, eyes sharp, every muscle coiled. Then, without waiting for my permission or a fight, he moved me, physically, carefully, closer to his room, just a few steps down the hall. But it was a world apart from before. It wasn't control, it was a choice, protection, not obligation. I didn't argue, not because I was weak, because I finally understood that standing near him, under his shadow, didn't mean I was less. It meant I was seen, that the silence between us had shifted from distance to something like trust. The envelope sat heavy in my hand when I opened it, nothing inside but a single card, blank except for one word etched in black. Remember, the past wasn't done with me, but neither was he. Luca's presence didn't feel suffocating anymore. It was a tether, a quiet promise that whatever was coming, the ghosts, the danger, we'd face it together. I glanced up at him, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the Mafia prince, not just the protector, but someone who wanted me close, not because he had to, but because he chose to. The world outside was dark, ruthless, but inside this small space, a new kind of light flickered, not a blaze, just a steady flame, the lighter in his hand, now always within reach. We were marked again, but this time, it wasn't by fear, it was by something harder to fight, belonging. I found him where he always is now, on the edge of the hall, one shoulder against the wall, arms crossed like he's guarding the night itself. He didn't look at me when I stepped closer, but he didn't move away either. I'm not here about the threat, I said quietly. His jaw flexed, I could almost hear the teeth grinding beneath it. I know what that was, I know who sent it, but that's not what I need to ask. A pause, a beat where the air felt too still. Then his eyes finally met mine, dark, steady, unreadable. I swallowed. Are you still angry at me, Luca? The question hung there like smoke, like it wasn't mine to ask, and yet it was the only one I had left. He didn't flinch, didn't soften, just breathed, slow and tight, like he'd been holding the answer in his ribs for too long. I was never angry at you, my breath caught, because that wasn't the answer I expected. I was angry at what loving you made me risk. His voice was low, nearly a whisper, no bitterness, just truth, scraped raw. I gave you pieces no one else ever got close to, he said, and you. He stopped, shook his head once. You didn't break them. You just walked away before I knew what I'd given. He wasn't blaming me, that was the hardest part. He was just letting me see it, what it cost him to feel, and I didn't crumble under it this time. I didn't apologize for something I didn't mean to do. I just stood there, with him, in the weight of it. I didn't know how to stay, I whispered. I didn't know how to ask you to, he replied. It wasn't closure, but it was the thing that was always missing, the real thing between us, not silence, not revenge, just honesty, the kind you only give to the one person who's already seen everything else, and still showed up. The envelope was thin, no name on the outside, just the seal of my father's office. I didn't open it right away, I already knew what it would say. I sat on the edge of the bed, the one Luca had quietly moved me into, closer to him, closer to where the walls were thicker and the shadows felt watched. He never explained why, he didn't have to. Inside the envelope, a flight itinerary, a new identity, an address on some quiet, faraway coast, a way out. I stared at it for a long time, not with panic, not even relief, just stillness, because for the first time in months, I realized I didn't want to run, not even to start over. I didn't want new. I wanted this, scars and all. I found Luca in the downstairs hall, his back to me, jacket half on like he was heading out. He turned when he heard my steps. I got a letter, I said. He didn't ask from who. He already knew. I could leave, tonight, be safe, disappear. Still, he said nothing. I held the envelope out between us, then dropped it, let it fall, quiet and final, between our feet. I'm not staying because I'm afraid, I said. I'm staying because I see you now. His eyes didn't soften, but something in his stance changed, loosened, like I'd unlocked a door neither of us had noticed was shut. I see the man you've had to be, I continued, voice lower now, and the one you've been trying not to become. He stepped closer, just once, not touching, just near. And, he asked, and I'm not asking you to be anything else. The silence after that was heavy, not with doubt, with acceptance. This wasn't some grand declaration. It was a decision, mine. He didn't thank me, didn't promise anything in return. Just met my gaze like it mattered, like I mattered, and that was enough. He didn't say come in, just left the door open, and waited. Luca stood by the dresser, one hand braced on the wood like he wasn't sure if he wanted to do this, or maybe he was sure, and that was what scared him. There was a silence between us that had stopped feeling dangerous. It was just air now, not a weapon. Then he opened the top drawer and pulled something from the back. A small, flat brass key, no tag, no explanation, just smooth metal warmed by his palm. He didn't hand it to me right away. Top drawer in the desk, he said finally, voice low, in my room. I took the key like it weighed more than it should. What's in there? I asked. His eyes flicked to mine, held. Nothing illegal, he said, dry, then softer. Nothing useful, either. He could have just told me to look, or not to, but he didn't. He let it be mine, my choice. I waited until later, when I was alone, the light low, the hum of rain touching the windows like a second heartbeat. The key slid into the lock, quiet click. Inside, a folded court summons from the year he got arrested. A black and white photo of a boy on his father's shoulders, neither smiling, a chain with a charm I'd never seen him wear, a note, creased down the middle. The handwriting was tight, uneven. If she ever sees this, it's already too late, but maybe she'll understand that I wanted to protect her, even when I didn't know how to keep myself from breaking. No signature. Just that. I didn't cry, didn't smile either, but I folded the paper carefully, put everything back exactly how I found it. Except the photo. I kept it, not to hold on to the past, but because he'd let me in, and that meant something. Not proof, permission. The first time I sat out here, I was trying to breathe through guilt. The second time, it was fear. This time, I just needed the quiet. Luca was already on the steps, stone beneath him, elbows resting on his knees. That same stillness he wore like armor. He didn't turn when I opened the door, just moved over an inch. Enough space for me to sit beside him without asking. We didn't speak, didn't need to. The air smelled like wet leaves and smoke. Somewhere in the trees, cicadas buzzed low and tired. The sky above us was washed out gray, holding the weight of another storm that hadn't broken yet. He lit a cigarette, used my lighter, flicked it once, then again, like he couldn't break the habit of hearing it. I didn't flinch this time. Thought you hated when I smoked, he said after a while, voice rough, not defensive, just remembering. I hated not knowing if it was your last one, I said. Like every time you lit it, I had to wonder if you were trying to disappear. He didn't answer, just blew the smoke out slow, like he was holding something between his teeth that hurt too much to swallow. The lighter clicked again. He offered it to me, not the cigarette, just the lighter, and I took it, held it in my palm, warm, familiar. Our knees didn't touch. His shoulder never brushed mine, but I could feel him there, solid and quiet beside me, not reaching, but not pulling away either. This wasn't about fixing anything, wasn't about talking it out or dragging wounds into the light. It was just breath, and space, and a moment that didn't need to be earned or explained. He didn't look at me, but I watched the way his hand curled loose around the edge of the step, not clenched, not braced, just there, here. So I stayed, not because I was waiting for something, but because there was no rush anymore, and he wasn't alone. The halls used to creak like they were warning me. Now they just breathe. It's past midnight, I can't sleep, but I don't feel restless, just aware, awake in a different way. The corridor is quiet, lined with old wood and older secrets. Once, every step here felt watched, judged, like the walls knew I didn't belong. Tonight, they don't press in, they just exist, like me. Luca's door is ahead, half closed, light spilling from beneath like a low whisper. He leaves it on now. Most nights, he used to bolt it shut. I pass it slow. Don't stop, don't knock. I don't need to. That feels like a miracle. My bare feet make no sound against the cool floor. I trail my fingers along the wall. Remember when my hands used to shake walking past this room? When I left the first aid kit outside it. Didn't knock then either. Just hoped. Now I don't have to hope. Now I know. The light under his door isn't a flare or a trap. It's a signal. A quiet I'm here, and that's enough. There's tea waiting on the kitchen counter. Still warm. I didn't make it. He must have known I'd be up. The cup is mismatched. One of the older ones I claimed weeks ago and forgot about. Faded blue with a tiny chip on the rim. Sweet. Just the way I like it. The lighter sits beside it. Mine, now. I carry it some days. Other days, I leave it where he can find it again. Like passing notes without ink. We don't say much. That's the point. The quiet used to feel sharp. Like broken glass. Now it feels like a soft place to land. This house hasn't changed. The corners are still too dark. The air still smells like rain and something old. But it's not cold anymore. Maybe because I'm not. And maybe that's all healing really is. Not the place changing. Just the way you walk through it. The door clicks shut behind me. Soft, final. I don't lock it right away. I just stand there, still, listening. There's no sound in the hallway now. No footsteps fading. No breath held on the other side. But I know he was there. I can feel it in the quiet. The kind that doesn't press. Just waits. My room's dim, lit only by the lamp I left on earlier. The rain stopped, the windows fogged, the night curling up around the glass like it's tired too. And on my bed, a mug, old ceramic, faded rim, steam still rising, sweet, not too hot, just the way I take it, and beside it, the lighter, not tossed, not hidden, placed, carefully, like it belongs, still warm. I sit, not because I'm exhausted, but because something in me softens, drops anchor. I wrap my hands around the mug, breathe in the tea before I sip. It tastes like peace, if that's a flavor. The lighter, I don't touch right away, just watch it. Remember when I used to flinch at the sound of it sparking in his hand. Remember the first time he gave it to me. No words, just a look that said I see you. Remember all the nights I turned it over in my palm like it might burn a hole through my skin. Now it just sits there, mine, his, ours. No note, no explanation, just presence. I drink slowly, let the silence hold me, not alone, just unwatched. And when I finally get up, when I finally lock the door, I know he hears it, because he doesn't sleep until I'm in the room, doesn't rest until he hears me lock the door. He didn't sleep until I was in the room, didn't rest until he heard me lock the door. If this story moved you, if you felt Eva's silence, Luca's stillness, and the warmth between the cracks, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with someone who believes love doesn't need to be loud to be real. And if you're ready for more stories where the quiet says everything, stay with us. The next chapter of love is coming soon.